Hello and welcome. This is episode number 20 of the vCD Roundtable, and we are still at the ComVision kickoff here in Vancouver. And as such, we wanted to give you a bit of an update about the vCD, or not vCD, but vCPP Cloud Provider Program, however that's going to be named in the new Broadcom terms. But it feels like over the last couple of days that some things get a bit more clear about what's going to happen. Again, as always, we can't confirm anything. We cannot actually tell you finally what it is going to be. But also speaking to analysts and press and a few other people, there is one picture which seems to be aligning everywhere. And with that being said, Sajay, do you want to kick it off?
Yes, so it will become very interesting. So we had many talks with service providers in the last days. So some of them were visited by VMware and had the first talks. We heard some papers will go out in the next days. And though it will become very interesting for the smaller service providers, because we had talks with big ones, with small ones, and got from many small ones that are invited in a list or proposed to be on a list. And what we got now in the last days more and more is that there will be some requirements on how the license work in the future.
And let me summarize that, because if you know the program, and most probably you do, it was in the past a very flexible program based on the memory that was running as virtual machines, virtual workload in your data center. And now this whole model is shifting, because in the past, when you had, let's say, workload sold, you would only be charged for your VMware license based on the things you had on your platform. So the risk of getting the license into your business model was taken by VMware. In the new model, it will be based on the cores that exist in your data center. And especially let's say the risk is now with the provider, which creates some, I know that's a thumb up, I would say. But we need to figure out a way, or we heard about the concerns of service providers. Hey, what is if Broadcom, VMware by Broadcom, will raise the bar so high that it doesn't make sense for us to get into this new program? And for anyone who's not watching the video, you should do it. It's a good one. With
Fabian has quite a few thumbs up on his face. Yeah, to just actually come back to that point, it seems like there will be a pretty heavy minimum commit for service providers moving forward. That minimum commit is not only going to cover, like in the past, where you basically could pick and choose your different commit level. It sounds like that there will be a minimum commit for the top tier, and there will be a minimum commit for the tier 2. And even though a lot of service providers over the last couple of weeks were very happy that they were told that they were suggested for the tier 2 list, that suggestion might come out now as quite of a big surprise, because once people figure out how low or high, depending on how you look at it, that minimum commitment is going to be, that might be completely unfeasible for some service providers to actually become part of tier 2. At least I know a bunch who actually got the notice a few days ago about that they would be suggested about tier 2. And when I look at their numbers, they are far enough away from whatever I heard as a new limit.
Yeah. And when we see the providers that we consult and support over the last years, a lot of them, they have found a great niche. They're highly specialized, but they do that with 20, 30, 40 physical servers. Yeah? And if the bar is so high that they would need to double the amount, this is something that will really have an impact on their business model. And I mean, it's end of February. They don't have much time to decide. So, I mean, I really liked the idea of us, or you came up directly just before Christmas. The letter came out that the termination of the partner contract is coming, and you directly said, okay, let's put the message out and give everyone the chance to reach out for us, have a talk, so that we can, let's say, make the bad communication style that was made at this point in time into something where the service provider at least have an idea what is going to happen and how to develop a strategy around that. And in those, I think it was more than 50 calls and service providers I we talk with, I was really surprised what kind of awesome service they're offering from the solution and the niche in which the customer in, but also on how good our reputation is, that they came to us and said, hey, I don't know what's going on. You have can't you do that for us? So this was something where I get goosebumps already, you know, because that's something we worked for many years to get this reputation, and they're coming to us and say, hey, can you help us in getting this settled? Because we are not heard or seen at the moment by Broadcom, and this is really awesome.
And we have it on the license, from the license perspective. But we have it also from the design perspective. We had many service providers come to us and say, hey, how should we design our Cloud Director environment for the future to be work or in the head with all of these changes coming from VRAM, current consumption, going to cores currently in the clusters, because that's a big challenge, especially for service providers who have disaster recovery data centers for their customers, hosting all of that. And that is a new important point in the future. You have to do your commitment to get the discounts, and we don't know, but it looks like at least 1 year, but for the real discounts where you can stay on the market with good prices for your customers, you have to agree on 3 years.
When you think about this as a service provider, it's not only about committing for 3 years. In reality, if I look at some of the smaller or medium-sized service providers we have, is in many of these cases, there is at least 1 or 2 customers which make up a significant percentage of their program from that perspective. And that significant percentage could actually then become a problem, because that contract might no longer be 3 years. And as it seems like there is now a pricing difference between all of these different tiers, as soon as this customer basically comes to the end of the contract, they might be looking for something else. And so that's going to be an impact. And when we combine that with what we hear everywhere again and again, and that was one of the fear which we heard from many of these service providers we talked to, we emailed with, and had all kinds of communications. Many of them told us, look, what we are really afraid of is that moving forward, that we need to provide end customer data to our larger service providers. And looking at that specific scenario, so now let's imagine, so my customer contract might run out in 1.5 years. My competition basically has all the customer data. They more or less can calculate based on the cores and everything else how much this customer potentially might be spending.
But can you repeat it somehow? Why should my competitor get all the information?
Because it's when you look at it, if you are not a tier 1 or tier 2 service provider, you cannot report your customer data directly to Broadcom. And by the way, the old VCPP program had already a term in there that VMware can request end customer data, but it was more or less never enforced. The new program will more or less, at least that's what you hear again and again everywhere, will be enforced, because Broadcom wants to know which end customer sits at which service provider. So moving forward, as this new white label program comes into play, which is just a resale model in the end, from one service provider to another, you will need to provide that end customer data up the stream. And if you provide this up the stream, you need to provide that to the higher tier service provider. And there comes another thing with that. It's not only that you need to report that, in reality, that higher tier service provider will also be authorized and forced, however that's going to look like, to run license audits then, because in the end, Broadcom does no longer have a direct end contract with the end service provider. So that might open door and everything, so that your competitor or your higher up service provider in the food chain might come along and actually ask you to provide you the more details about their infrastructure. And so there is a high risk in this scenario, considering that white label would go to the next higher tier service provider in the region.
Absolutely, and it also looks like that the service providers, the higher level service providers doing white labeling or whatever the name will be, needs to do layer 1 and 2 support for the smaller service providers, and also needs to open the layer 3 support case at VMware. And that means this white label providers sit in the middle of VMware and your customers.
The cool thing is about all that, I mean, to be fair, this is now end of January. There's no facts at the moment, but the picture is getting clearer and clearer.
Absolutely.
We're working now for many weeks on all kind of scenarios to make sure as soon as we have facts, we go out to our service providers that had our help in the past, that subscribe to our newsletter, that are in contact with us, and we propose a solution to them. So I would say we are ready from the logistical stuff to offer such a white label service, because we are one of the leading experts technically. I mean, we all have a technical background. I mean, now we're talking business, but we have technical guys, and we are experts in the field. We created teams that are experts around cloud provider products of VMware, and it was amazing for me to see that the smaller and middle-sized service providers come to us and say, hey, can't you do the handling for us? Because we don't want to care about the basic VMware stuff, I would call it. We have a proper niche that we put service on top of it, and we need a reliable partner that is helping us to deliver that. And it's awesome that we've become such a partner in the world. And the talks with those, I mean, many of those smaller service providers, they're very often smaller ones. The owner is still active in the business development, and they are afraid of what is coming, because I mean, their business model, all their existence is based on a contract with VMware with no clear idea what's happening on the last day of March. And if you talk to them, you see that they're not really afraid, but they, you know, there's this risk in their business, in their life thing that they've created. And that was amazing that we at least able to clear certain things up and develop solutions with them. So if you are one of the service providers who haven't talked to us yet, please reach out for us. In the show notes, there is a link where you can always schedule a meeting to get one of our management team, and we will definitely try to give you a clear path. And we are fast enough that as soon as there's anything out that gives us clearance, we're there to help you with a proper solution.
It's also maybe a good idea to subscribe to our service provider newsletter, where we will also keep you posted with all the latest news. It sounds like that the next 2 weeks are going to be very interesting, and we'll have a lot of changes coming up. As soon as we have something new, we will keep you posted, either on individual videos or we do another episode. Other than that, we currently plan the next vCD Roundtable episode to be a technical one again, but we thought it's important to keep you updated with the latest news from the industry.
Yeah, and if you have questions, get in contact with us, write us a message, and we will schedule a meeting.
Thank you, and have a good day.
And you can schedule meetings directly as well. Check the show notes. See you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.